See, I'm so tired of hearing these idiots call my name as
What?
Fani.
Fani?
In a way to attempt to humiliate me.
There's nothing illegal, and we've asked multiple times, come forward, tell us what it is that they did that's actually illegal. There's nothing. There's no intent to defraud. There's no proof of that.
I mean, I'm for turning loose all of these records. Who in here has had the taxpayer pay for their sexual misconduct charges, the hush money? There may be some over here. I don't know. But I do know it's taxpayer money, and I do know not a single penny of it has been turned in as a campaign finance expense.
Fani Wills rages at people who just are using her name. We've called her Big Fani Wills here for a long time because she is the biggest Fani in Georgia. She's made a big name for herself as the head DA of Fulton County. So we want to honor and respect her, but she's not very happy about it. She says we're like high school kids, very immature, and basically I feel like we're under attack here today. So we're going to talk about this and then get some reaction from defense attorney Steve Sadow and Ashleigh Merchant. But here's just a short excerpt. Fani was back at a church again, and she was doing her thing where she's lecturing everybody about how godly she is and how monstrous everybody else is. Remember the last time we heard her at a church, she was explaining how she had other white people who worked for her too, and I guess she wasn't sleeping with them, but there is racism against her and God is on her side and all the things. So she's at another church, and here she is attacking all of us, my friends. We're in this together.
While they over there running their mouth, I'm over here paying them no mind. See, I'm so tired of hearing these idiots call my name as
What?
Fani.
Fani?
In a way to attempt to humiliate me.
You've done that with your own behavior and your own actions.
Because like silly schoolboys, name reminds them of a woman's rear.
Yeah, Big Fani. First of all, we never made the derriere innuendo, okay? She happens to have a big butt, that's true. But we never made that the subject of our nickname here. We were trying to be honorable and respect her because she is the biggest Fani in Georgia. So I don't know what's so offensive about that. She is the biggest Fani in Georgia. I don't know what she's so upset about. This was supposed to be an honorable label for her because she's so accomplished, fighting for America to stop dangerous tyrants from seizing our democracy. All right, so she appealed. We read that yesterday. And Fani is very upset. She was telling the Court of Appeals, you guys are idiots. I can't believe you improvidently granted this decision because you can't challenge Scott McAfee's factual findings. In her appeal, which we read yesterday, here is what Steve Sadow said in response to her appeal. Says Steve Sadow, Trump's lead attorney in Georgia, called the prosecution filing, quote, a last-ditch effort to stop any appellate review of DA Willis's conduct. He accused prosecutors of omitting McAfee's criticism of Willis and her behavior in his March order. So shout out to Steve Sadow, who did make that point. And Fani didn't tell us at all about her stinky Fani odor of mendacity that was permeating the entire courtroom and funking up all of Fulton County. It was stinky, and people had some questions about why Fani was so stinky and stinking up their entire county. So here is a little excerpt from our friend Ashleigh Merchant. She was on with Kaitlin Collins and been doing excellent work there exposing all of the corruption in Georgia, in Fulton County, and tells us very clearly here that there is no illegality in this case, in the Young Thug case. We don't know about intentionality from Fani. They just bring charges, and it doesn't ultimately prove any criminality at all. Here's Ashleigh.
If you look at all of the discovery in the Georgia case, I've seen nothing illegal. There's nothing illegal, and we've asked multiple times, come forward, tell us what it is that they did that's actually illegal. There's nothing. There's no intent to defraud. There's no proof of that. So if you've got that fear, the safest option when you're appearing in front of January 6th committee is to plead the fifth, because you don't know how that is going to be used. He has been indicted for something that's not illegal here in Georgia. And so you have to have caution when you're testifying in front of a committee like that. Well,
okay, so she goes on to read all the charges and says, so those are criminal charges, says Kaitlin Collins. Then Ashleigh Merchant obviously obliterates that by saying, yeah, but there's no facts that show that those charges are actually criminal, because when you have criminal charges, there are elements of an offense, and you got to prove those various elements, like check boxes you have to check off. One of those involves a mens rea, a guilty mindset. What is the intentionality? What is the mindset that is necessary to create satisfaction of that criminal element? What is the culpability standard? And they haven't proven that in Fani's case. And now this is more because Tom Thomas Massie was also digging into these state-level prosecutions. He was asking about Alvin Bragg and about what's happening in New York when he was there. This clip comes from our friend Kaneko the Great, doing great work over there on X. Clip this one for us. You can see 1 million views on this puppy because he's digging into this problem from a different state. Fani's going hog wild, melting down. Don't call me booty. And now Massie is asking questions about Bragg and Colangelo and how all of these weaponized prosecutors are colluding together to impact and rig 2024. Here is Massie digging in.
Kind of crime here, but when we dig down to the bottom of it and try to find out what the underlying crime is, I don't think that's been discussed enough, or what the supposed underlying crime is. One of the propositions was that hush money should be reported as a campaign finance expense. Okay, if somebody pays their attorney to seal divorce records, Mr. Trainer, is that a campaign finance expense? Is that something you see on campaign finance reports?
That is not. It is something that you would see. Legal fees are often reported, and it has been the tradition at the commission in looking at those legal fees that we don't question what the attorney-client privilege between the candidates and the lawyer are of what's needed in those particular circumstances.
Yeah, Hillary Clinton got away with that when she hired for
use
Steele.
another example. In 1999, Bill and Hillary Clinton bought a house in New York. Obviously influenced the election of the Senate race there in New York because they moved into the House so that she could run for Senate. Is that a campaign finance expense? Is everything that could influence a campaign finance expense?
Well, under Mr. Bragg's interpretation, it would be, but under normal campaign finance law, it would not be. There are distinct similarities here between the John Edwards prosecution in 2008, where he paid over $1 million to his mistress to keep her quiet and was prosecuted by the Department of Justice for that and was ultimately acquitted on 1 count and had a mistrial on all 5 counts because the jury was given a correct charge as to what the federal law was. In this particular case, the jury was given an incorrect jury charge as to what the law is, and they come out with a completely opposite ruling.
I asked my campaign finance treasurer if I could pay my wife $10,000. She's got more dirt on me than anybody else, and then report that as a campaign finance expense. And he's very fastidious. He manages the finances of at least a dozen different campaigns. And he looked at me like I was crazy. Yet, isn't that sort of the same theory that Alvin Bragg had here, that something like that could be reported as a campaign finance expense?
It's very similar to what's happened here.
So, Congress has paid over $17 million in hush money for sexual misconduct inside of the offices in these buildings. And what's more is that was taxpayer money, right? The allegation is that President Trump paid $130,000 of his own money. But here in Congress, there may be some on this dais. I mean, I'm for turning loose all of these records. Who in here has had the taxpayer pay for their sexual misconduct charges the hush money? There may be some over here. I don't know. But I do know it's taxpayer money. And I do know not a single penny of it has been turned in as a campaign finance expense. I mean, is the FEC going to investigate the $17 million that the Congress has paid to settle behind closed doors these sexual misconduct allegations?
Congressman, if a complaint were to come to us about it, I'm sure it would be thoroughly investigated.
We'd like to
I
just
might
know the
file
names.
one because it seems like anybody could do this. But let me just ask this. Is this verdict going to be vacated? Attorney General Bailey, what do you think?
It absolutely should be.
On what grounds?
Numerous grounds. I think the 5 grounds I laid out in my opening statement provide sufficient justification to undermine the credibility of the conviction. I think there are additional grounds
jurisdiction,
as well.
Jury
But I think
instruction.
that the constitutional violations, the due process violation, the jury unanimity, 6th Amendment problem alone, the gag order is violative of the First Amendment. I mean, the prosecutorial misconduct, those conviction is replete with legal error.
Yeah.
Ms. Foley, do you think this is going to be vacated, this verdict?
I do, and I think eventually it's going to be reversed based on legal grounds rather than mixed questions of fact and law. So some of the evidentiary issues, some of the bias issues, I think they're more difficult to win on appeal because the appellate courts owe deference.
And
on
because
these
it's a New York Court of
evidentiary
Appeals.
determinations
Yeah.
of trial judges. Bias
They're
is
also
very difficult
biased.
to win on appeal because the judge has so much latitude in deciding whether to recuse himself. That's why the due process errors are so critical here, because obviously due process errors are questions of law. They get de novo standard of appellate review. The appellate courts owe absolutely no deference whatsoever.
So the irony here is this is going to be vacated, and this trial was all about trying to influence an election, using the process as the punishment. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to submit for the record 3 documents. One is entitled FEC Drops Investigation into Trump Hush Payments. This is from 3 years ago. I'd like to introduce a document. Congress has paid $17 million in sexual misconduct and discrimination settlements. This was in Axios.
That's our money.
2017. And my third and final document I'd like to introduce is from CNN. Congress paid out $17 million in settlements. Here's why we know so little about that money.
Yeah, and we'd like to know who's
Thank
on
you. I
that
yield
list.
back.
Wouldn't it be nice to just have a list of names? Like, who were those settlements? settlements paid out on behalf of. Updating lists, another settlement, another congressperson, another claim, another claim. Would be very interesting. I've not seen a list like that. We all know why that is. All right, so that's Massie. That's Fani. We got Bragg. It's corrupt. It's collusion all over the place. Ashleigh Merchant digging in on it. Steve Sadow. Fani Wills is freaking out because she's got a big booty, which we never even brought up here, okay? She's just got a problem with that, which a lot of people like that. It's not even a big problem, okay? People twerking all over the place these days. Not a big deal. I'm sure she was doing that with Nathan Wade. That's probably why they're still friends. So, Fani Wills freaks out. We'll continue to cover it, my friends. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this. Thanks for sharing this video with someone else who might be interested in Fani's giant ass. We'd love to have them come join us here on this channel, and we'd love to see you back here as well on the next one.